Hi friends, welcome back to Farm Girl Diaries. It is the day the tomatoes come out and I am both sad but excited. One thing I realized in my older age is I do like things to be organized, and I'm not a clean freak by any means, but I like things to be moderately, I like things to be clean. And what is funny about this year is this year was, surprisingly, I think, the least amount of weeds I have had ever in my garden. Now, I really, really battle thistle, and I just don't see that getting any better. And there are times, especially during August, there's what I call the August curse, where the weather is inclusive of the weeds. The weather just helps the weeds just explode. And you're also, one, it's too hot, so I'm not going outside and do my typical weeding because it's just 5,000 degrees outside and I'm not trying to die. And I'm dramatic. And two, my focus is on preservation. You know, I gotta get the stuff that's coming in out of the garden, I gotta get it preserved. So August, everything kind of goes wild. My plants that I intended to plant, like my vegetables, my flowers, they took off, but so do the weeds. But I will say, aside from the thistle, if we ignore the thistle, my weeds, my weed pressure was much lower than previous years. I lost the middle of my garden. I have paths in the middle of my garden and I lost them, but I lost them because I planted 3 tomatillos in one small bed and they got massive. So a lot of the messiness of this garden was stuff that I had planted that just got huge. You know, I had my tomato cages here. One of them got pushed over just with the weight of the tomato plants, and then as it got pushed over, everything just kind of went. So it was August. It's a messy garden. It always is, but I am always excited to reclaim my garden. So like I was saying, it's been rainy here for the past 5 or 6 days, something like that. And before that I had COVID for a week, and before that I was in South Dakota, and then before that it was August. So I haven't actually been able to come out to the garden for a very, very long time. But today I worked my typical 9-hour day. I went grocery shopping after work, and it's currently 6 o'clock and I decided to come start working in the garden. So that's the funny thing, like in the middle of August and even middle of July, I don't want to do the work. I don't want to do it, but it's been raining for the past so many days. I haven't been able to be outside for the past so many days that I don't even care that it's technically the time I'm supposed to be feeding myself. And I'm coming outside and I worked outside. So I'm going to show you everything I did. It's very messy. Like, kind of when you organize your house or clean your house, it typically gets worse before it gets better. It's worse before it gets better. But I have all the tomato plants ripped out. I have all the tomato cages ripped out. But this is going to be, I think, a part 1 of a video. I think so. I think I'm gonna do a part. Well, I know I'm gonna do a part 2. I just don't know when I'm gonna do the part 2. But I wanted to talk about, before I show you the tomatoes, I wanted to talk about what the tomato patch looks like. I wanted to talk about all the things that you can do with your green tomatoes. So like I said, this is gonna be a part 2 video, maybe even a part 3, depending on how many things I decide to do. But I thought probably a lot of you have tomatoes come in right now and you don't know what to do with them. So let's talk about green tomatoes. It is almost end of September, so I'm covered in green tar. If you ever work with tomatoes, your hands get really dirty. It's called green tar. It comes off with some soap. But it's time for me to take my tomatoes out. I typically like to leave the garden as long as possible, but this year I'm just like, I need to reclaim it. But what had happened with a lot of my tomatoes is, even on the vine, I had one over there and I lost it, but they're getting ugly. So this one is still very green. It's getting ugly. They have a lot of marks on them because we're kind of in a drought right now. I'm actually in a water conservation right now, so I'm not even supposed to be able to water the garden. So my tomatoes are definitely not getting the water they need, which is, well, that's not the right one. That's why it has like cat facing on the bottom. That's why they have these marks on the top. It's because it's not getting enough water. And then 2, if you look at these tomatoes, these are small tomatoes. You know, I am picking them. I mean, look at that one. That one's terrible. I shouldn't even take him inside. I'm not going to take him inside, but like, you can see just how awful they look. This one has bugs in him. We're going to get rid of him right now. They have bugs in them, and they're not even getting big too. So a lot of things are happening. One, it's the end of the season. The tomatoes are kind of, you know, they're done for. They're not going to go forever. Two, it's been really hot. Well, it got really hot, so the tomatoes made smaller tomatoes. So once it kind of gets up to 90 degrees, 95 degrees, the tomatoes can stop. They can stop blooming altogether, which means they drop their blossoms. So the blossom will open and produce a fruit, aka you don't get any fruit. Or as it kind of starts cooling down a little bit, the tomatoes just don't get as big. You know, they're not getting what they were at the beginning of the season. The plant is stressed. The plant probably has bugs. So it ends up with much smaller tomatoes. So I could leave these tomato plants in the ground and leave these tomatoes on the plant, and the ones I have, and I'll show you, are terrible. Like the ones that are ripe and ready for picking are rotten. They're infested with bugs. They're cat-faced to all get out. Like they're just not healthy, good-looking tomatoes. Not tomatoes that you want to eat. So the tomato season, unfortunately, is done. But I have a big basket. So what I do before I whip out my tomatoes is I harvest all of my green ones. So there's a lot you can do with your green tomatoes. Now I don't have a ton here, so I'm not going to get to do all these recipes with you, but we are going to do some. So the one that I really like to do, especially with these smaller tomatoes, like this guy, I like to, oh, this is a really good one. They're small, but I like to try to can these as fried green tomatoes. So there is a recipe, I think it's in Ball's cookbook. This one I'm definitely gonna do because I have a lot of these small tomatoes. So stay tuned for part 2. I'm 100% gonna do this. But you can the green tomatoes. And so why I like them to be small, and like, again, these are small and they're hard. They're, you know, the harder. But these I think are perfect for fried green tomatoes. Canned fried green tomatoes. The reason being, I'm covered in thorns. The reason being is because these are firmer tomatoes. But when you can fried green tomatoes, you can them in like a pickling liquid. So these tomatoes will sit in that liquid. Now I found that I typically like to use these fried green tomatoes November, December, and January. Come February, March, and April, or you know, kind of around there, the tomatoes start getting just a little bit softer, and maybe too soft for a really yummy fried green tomato. But when you have firmer tomatoes like this that had a lot of growing they needed to do yet, that'll help keep them from softening in the pickling brine as fast as if you had, you know, a tomato that was like blushing, like red like this, that's not as firm. So that I really like. So all you do is make a brine, you can them, so you stack the tomatoes in the jar, which is why I like to do the small ones that'll fit in a wide mouth pint jar. And then when you know, sometimes around here in December or January, we'll have those days where it's 60, 70 degrees, and it just feels, after being super, super cold, and it just feels like summer in the middle of December, or spring in the middle of December. I love to get outside, turn on the grill, and kind of make a summery food. So those fried green tomatoes, I typically eat more of these in the winter months than I do in the summer months, because I'm channeling, I'm channeling summer. So that's one of my favorite ways to use fried green tomatoes. Or sorry, green tomatoes. Number 2 is you can do barbecue sauces and ketchups. So these you can cook down and make another barbecue sauce or a ketchup similar to how you would use your regular ripe tomatoes. So that's delicious. Last year, Rachel 1870's Homestead, I made it last year. I think she did the recipe 2 years ago. She made a green tomato curry. And that is also very good. So that would probably take this whole basket and make a delicious, delicious curry. Another way that you can preserve these is you can make, what did I just read? Another way you can use these green tomatoes is to make a green enchilada sauce or a green salsa verde. I've made a really delicious green salsa verde. So that is just some of the more popular, I think, best options for using these green tomatoes. Now, as you see, I only have a basket this big. It's not big as my head. It's not super, super big. And look what I found from my summer zucchini. My summer zucchini, I found a zucchini. So, oh, this has a little bit of bug damage. It might have bugs in it. It has a little bit of bug damage. So we're gonna eat that for dinner here soon, probably tonight, and hopefully it doesn't have bug damage. But that was exciting. But that is what I'm going to do with some of my green tomatoes. I know I'm going to do the fried green tomatoes. And then if you don't can or you aren't interested in canning, I will take these tomatoes. So tomatoes release a chemical on the plant that they need the sun to kind of release. And that's what starts them blushing and ends up having them ripen into ripe tomatoes. So as you will notice, none of these, or the majority of these, are not even blushing yet. They're very, very green. These bigger ones, if I was to leave these on my counter, would slowly ripen. So what I typically do, now I'm not going to do it this year, unfortunately, and that is kind of upsetting for me actually, because what I typically do is I have bigger tomatoes than this, and you know, I typically have tomatoes this size and bigger, and that's not even that big, but I set them on my dining room table and I let them slowly ripen, and just about every couple of days I'll go grab whatever's ripe, whatever's ready to go, and I throw it in a pot and I make a really, really quick, really, really delicious tomato soup. So that is one of my other favorite ways. If you're not interested in canning it, you're not interested in doing anything, just let them ripen on your counter, then throw them in a pot. I cook them down. So I throw them in a pot, skins and all. I cook them down in the pot until they're completely soft. I get my immersion blender, I blend them up. I like to strain it because I don't like the skin, so I do strain it. You can do cheesecloth, I typically just do a regular colander, and that collects most of the skins. And then I add some milk, I add some garlic, I add some caramelized onion, I add some salt, some pepper, some spices, maybe like a little bit of fresh basil is delicious. And a little bit of Tabasco sauce. And you do need a little bit of sugar to cut that acidity. But that is all. I do that all the time, and it is fantastic. So don't get discouraged if you have a ton of fresh tomatoes. Go pick those fresh or those green tomatoes. Go pick them. There are a ton of ways that you can use them. So come back for part 2, and I will show you especially how to can fried green tomatoes. I'm not going to do a ton, but a lot of these smaller tomatoes I'm going to, just because they're firmer, they're going to hold up well in the pickling brine. And then too, like, I'll cut these into slices, and like that'll just be like a pickle sized fried green tomato. It's going to be delicious. Okay, before we end this video though, I wanted to show you what else I was doing. So I have pulled out all of my sunflowers. Now, I do like to save seeds from my sunflowers. However, I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to save, oh, I don't know my face. How long has that been there? I'm also leaving these sunflowers here. So I'm going to leave these here and I'm let them continue to dry in the sun. The reason being is I want to come and I'm going to collect these sunflower seeds for the birds. I have a ton of birds. I've just gotten into bird feeding this year and bird watching, and when I tell you, it makes me so happy. That's not an exaggeration. It makes me so happy. So I want to save as many sunflower seeds as I can from the sunflowers that I grew, both for me and for the birds. So I'm going to let these just kind of like dry here. It is almost 7 o'clock right now. I came out around 6, so I came out at dinner time. But I'm gonna eventually this week, I'm gonna come out, I'm just gonna cut the heads off of these sunflowers, and that way the stalks can get thrown away. And then I'm just gonna let these heads continue to sit out here and dry until I can harvest the seeds. So look at this mess. It's a mess. But guys, it honestly looks so much better. So all of this over here, this massive pile over here, that is what I need to take to the farm. So what I actually do is you can compost all of this. My dog is barking because my neighbor is leaving. So let's pause for a second. Anywho, oh my God, look at my hands. I'm a mess. You can absolutely compost this. And if I didn't have a way to get this to a farm or somewhere else to get it out of my hair, I would compost this. I'm allowed to go in my house. I'm so messy. How long has all this stuff been here? Like, why didn't no one tell me? Anyhow, I feel like I'm getting a little delusional. I need some food in me. Past my supper time. But, so I'm going to take this to the farm to compost at the farm. if you didn't have a way to move your tomatoes, I could put it in my compost bin, which I do have, or you could just let this stay here and kind of let it compost over the winter. What'll happen is a lot of it'll break down. It is big pieces, so you could come through with a lawnmower as it kind of starts drying up and kind of chop it up or cut it up into smaller pieces, and you could let this compost in place and it'll feed your beds. You'll notice I did leave, let me walk over here and show you. I did leave tomatoes kind of where they fell. You can see there's a lot of red ones that just are rotten to the core. So I like to leave them, I'll be honest. I like to drop things where they land in hopes of having volunteer plants. My goal one year is to not have to garden and to have not a full garden and not an organized garden, but to have a garden of volunteer plants. I think that would be so fun. And then too, I like to I still like to have volunteers regardless. So this whole area looks terrible, but I've got everything pulled out. So again, if you're brand new here, I talk about this a lot, how I'm going to put this bed area to bed. I'm going to move everything out. I'm going to pull all of the weeds. I have, let me spin you around. I have a little patch of thistle here and a little patch of thistle here. I'm going to get it all pulled out. And then I'm going to cover this area with cardboard. I save all of my cardboard I get all the time. And I have my parents save their cardboard too. So I'm going to lay this whole area with cardboard and I'm going to cover with straw, leaves, probably some of my wood mulch that I have. And I'm also, I keep forgetting to mention this because I just do it. I fertilize before I lay the cardboard down. So I have azomite fertilizer, which is a really good all-base, a really good fertilizer. So I will fertilize all of my beds before I put them to bed. So I'll do azomite in this whole space, and then the cardboard, and then the mulch, the straw, and the leaves. And then that'll put this place to bed. And I'm ready for it. You will also notice, if you are familiar with my garden, if you're not, that's okay. My teepee is gone. I typically had a teepee made out of those sticks, and I need to come up with a better way. It was put together with twine, and my dad built it for me 2 years ago, and the twine doesn't last. Even I had zip ties on the tomato trellises, and the zip ties just snapped right now when I was taking them down. So that stuff just doesn't do in the heat. So if nothing else, I'll do twine again next year, and I'll just have to remember I need to reinforce it with every year with fresh twine. But I'm gonna hopefully maybe find something that'll last better in the sun so the teepee doesn't fall back down. So my dad doesn't know this yet, but he has to build me a new teepee, and one of the sticks broke, so he needs to find me a new stick. So he's so lucky to be my father. Okay, so stay tuned for part 2. We're gonna actually use up these green tomatoes, and I'll probably bring you guys along at some point and show you my harvest of sunflower seeds. But it's slowly coming together. So on our last video, we got all of the potato patch. That's a loud train. We got the potato patch completely cleared out. Now we have the tomato patch completely cleared out, and you can see all these beds again. You couldn't see these beds last year. So all we have to do, well, we have a lot. We have so much to do. But we have to harvest our sweet potatoes. We did sweet potato barrels this year. I'm not 100% sure how they did. This one I don't think did really good at all. But I'm thinking that one down there did pretty good. But I'm thinking we're going to try them again next year. And I might just try them, honestly, with regular potatoes. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think that was a massive failure, but I don't think it was a massive success. But we need to harvest our sweet potato barrels. And then we do have a couple of beds. We have this bed here, needs weeded, but this bed here that has zucchini and lettuce and a couple of beets. Not many, but a couple. And then we have a couple beds up there that have our fall potatoes, more lettuce, fall broccoli, which is honestly not doing anything, and some snap peas. So, I mean, the garden is slowly coming back together. We're trying to get it put to bed, but I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of have the garden in its restfulness state and have it looking pretty again. So thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you guys in just a couple of days when we work on those tomatoes, and then we'll keep working away trying to get this garden put to bed. Bye, friends.